Well, hello. It is Thursday, July 31st at 10:22 p.m., and I am going to read the introduction to my book, which is a dissertation on live performance anomaly, where I will study accidents, mistakes, and their consequences in the performing arts. It begins in this first section with layers, heuristics, and intended contributions. The focus of this work addresses a critically underexplored area of music performance practice, the phenomenon I term live performance anomaly. Anomaly, defined as a deviation from what is standard, normal, or expected, takes shape in live performance practice as any unexpected or unintended disruption. These disruptions may manifest as either accidents or mistakes, a distinction that will be explained in depth. In order to understand live performance anomaly, I have developed a system of analysis which I will introduce to you here. The first layer, the original model, serves as the source of expression for a performer. It is communicated orally in written forms or through other forms of documentation. Consider the original material a performer might work from. Musicians work from scores, which contain a complex array of information. Symbols for rhythm, pitch, tempo, dynamics, and expressive markings all meticulously placed by a composer to give as much guidance as possible. A score is essentially a set of instructions for how to recreate the intent of the composer. A score is a blueprint, a primary reference point. The second layer, the performer encodes information from the score into their brain. It becomes an internalized model of the original material, held and colored by the performer. This internal model, which I call the ideal model, is a mixture of learned original intent of the composer, plus the concepts, feelings, and intents that the performer may consciously or unconsciously add or subtract from the original. The third layer. The moment when the performer's internalized ideal model is enacted in real time before an audience, it manifests as a distinct output I call the expressive nucleus. This layer is an ephemeral site, situated on the surface of the performer, and is at reach of the audience. It is the location of co-created meaning-making, and a performance can be understood as a continuous stream of such nuclei unfolding over time. This is a critical layer, which will be the location of increased and ongoing investigation. The fourth layer, a rather mysterious aggregate of information, primarily formed within the audience but also in the performer's frame of reference, which I call the constructed model. It is built by individuals in the audience perceiving the constant flow of expressive nuclei, and the performer during moments of self-awareness and attention. The constructed model is made up of materials derived from the expressive nuclei, which exist as ephemeral sensory stimuli, contained and modulated by conscious and unconscious mechanisms of expectation and potential. Allow me to build a conceptual heuristic to help stabilize and ground a shared understanding, especially as we move towards examining the junctures between these layers. So, the original model plus the ideal model are multiplied against the expression nucleus, and that is then divided by the multiplications of expectation and potential, which end up creating the constructed model. So this heuristic describes the multi-layered nature of live performance and enables analysis of how and where anomalies tend to emerge. To clarify, I'll render the heuristic in narrative form. A performer studies or composes an original model, such as a musical score, then builds an ideal model through rehearsal, interpretation, and embodied understanding. At the moment of live performance before an audience, these models multiply into an expression nucleus and are outputted. The live and continuous act of the expectations held. The live and continuous act of communication. The live and continuous act of communication that binds intention and execution. I'm laughing because I just read this whole line wrong a bunch of times. The nuclei are then filtered through and against potentials of each moment. The result is the constructed model, a shared experiential entity, shaped by artistic intent, real-time expression, interpretive reception, and potential. Literally, it just happened right now, and you're experiencing anomaly in the performance of this reading. Anomaly can occur at any juncture between the aforementioned layers, but each interface point allows for a different kind or type of anomaly to be detected. I'll provide an initial survey of these junctures and anomaly type for illustrative purposes. Between the original model and the ideal model, the nature of anomaly may appear as a type of mistake. There might be a misreading or misinterpretation of information from the original, and the performer is the sole agent of this anomaly. The performer makes internal errors in perception, cognition, or rehearsal technique, which lead to errors in live performance. Between the ideal model and expressive nuclei, two types of anomaly are possible. A mistake or an accident may appear as a performance disruption or executional error. A guitarist might pluck the wrong string, or the finger may slip from the fretboard, or the guitar might slip from the performer's grasp. The nature of these anomalies are intriguing because they relate back to performance skills that are both deterministic and probabilistic in nature. This is a space where anomalies are most visible to an audience, and where a performer's cultivated skill can transform error into opportunity, a preview of creative resilience. Between the many expressive nuclei and expectation, there occurs another type of anomaly. There can appear to be misalignment in affect or meaning-making between the performer and audience, an awkward feeling or something uncomfortable that was said or done by a performer or audience member. The nature of this anomaly feels like an accident and a mistake, since the performer here is not necessarily the sole agent of the anomaly. External forces are at work in this juncture, and anomaly exists in the shared social and perceptual field of performance. There's some fuzziness here which will be interesting to explore. And finally, between expectation and the constructed model, anomaly appears in its most ephemeral form. Audiences may construct meaning, which is radically different from the intended meaning. An external disruption may cause the performance to be misperceived, or perhaps the audience believes some element of the performance is intentional, when in fact it was not. These forms of anomaly are rooted in context, perception, and interpretation, rather than in pure error, and are non-correctable types of accidents. This heuristic mapping functions as a diagnostic tool for identifying when, where, and how live performance anomalies occur. Drawing on this diagnostic framework, I introduce two original theoretical contributions to contemporary performance practice: mistake-making and creative resilience. Mistake-making describes a practical, physically embodied response mechanism to performance anomaly, and creative resilience characterizes an ontological relationship performers develop with anomaly, marked by adaptive capacities in perception, attention, and expressive motor and emotional control. Section 1.1. Adage, aphorism, and axiom. Anomalies are not unique to performance, nor are they new to humanity in general. We have encountered mysterious intrusions of the unknown into our daily lives for millennia. Quote, "If you do not expect the unexpected, you will not find it, for it is hard to be sought out and difficult." End quote. Heraclitus of Ephesus wrote profoundly during the Persian Empire around 500 BC. When anomalies manifest within us, quote, "good nature and good sense must ever join. To err is human, to forgive divine." End quote. Alexander Pope recognized in a nod to humanity's propensity for mistakes in his poem, An Essay on Criticism, in 1711, England. And revered late comic Robin Williams once said in a skit titled An Evening with Robin Williams, which was recorded live at a theater in San Francisco, California in 1984, quote, "What's right is what's left. If you do everything else wrong, ain't that bitch." End quote. Delivering a line that perfectly encapsulates what it feels like to be someone who's always in a state of controlled folly, always in the midst of anomaly. Even living physicist Sir Roger Penrose, who has spent much of his life exploring Einstein's theories of relativity and their intersections with quantum electrodynamics, employs anomaly in his research. Allow me to paraphrase a recent explanation he gave during an interview conducted by Kurt Diamondal on YouTube, dated July 29th, 2025. Quote, or in summary, or no, what did I say? Allow me to paraphrase. "In this experiment, there is now a little bead which is put into a superposition of two locations. I can't get rid of both of them at once with free fall. So what should I do? I do what any sensible physicist should do. I cheat. I say, okay, I know I should be using the Einstein perspective, but let's just try instead to measure the mistake that I'm making by adopting a Newtonian perspective, but keep track what might be a little error in doing it. I get an answer, which looks like an uncertainty in the mass of a system. Now that's a bit like particle physics, where if you have a decaying particle, its mass is not completely well defined. It has an error, a fuzziness in its mass, which is given by the Heisenberg time-energy uncertainty principle." End quote. These voices, philosopher, poet, performer, physicist, elucidate that unknown anomalies arrive spontaneously in our relationship with them as a person, as a researcher, as a performer. A fundamental piece of the totality of existence is revealed. We live in an uncertain, probabilistic universe, governed entirely by chance, and there's a lot at stake in our response to and utilization of anomaly. 1.2. Stakes and effect. Affect. The unknown and unknowable give rise to anomaly. Anomaly appears as accidents and mistakes. Accidents happen to us, and mistakes happen because of us. Accidents and mistakes manifest internal and external responses in and around the performer and audience. The quality of response is assigned meaning. Meaning informs subsequent actions. Actions cascade into expressions. And expressions which expand as waves in every direction into a shared physical space we call reality. A performer is an emitter and detector. A transceiver of virtuosity and anomaly. Engaged in meaning-making, mistake-making, and creative resilience for survival and as a profession. Every moment counts. Finite and ephemeral moments are the medium through which performers cast their intent into the world. We are forced to consider, what is at stake in live performance? It is by the very existence of anomaly that a host of other factors and instances emerge in our daily lives. Take a moment to survey your present surroundings. Right now, right where you are. Notice that as each moment passes, it contains potential. Potential generated by every person and object nearby. Potential energy which can become kinetic at any moment. Every moment of potential also has a particular set of qualities determined by unique, constantly fluctuating conditions. That's the fuzziness that Penrose referred to earlier, at least in an analogous manner. One calculable element of that fuzziness is that of stake. Stake is connected to affect, in that it impacts how we take action and is continuously operating within the construct of reality. Stake is actively calculated mentally by a person surveying their current situation with intent, and affect is constructed by a person internally processing interoceptive and sensorial stimuli as emotion. Both operate in simultaneity and are part of our response to fluctuating indeterminate anomalies from one moment to the next. A map can be built around stake and affect to help integrate these concepts into the broader examination of live performance anomaly and the application of mistake-making and creative resilience. Section A, stake, is the perceived pressure or importance of the performance. Artistic stakes include integrity of the expression itself. How authentic, accurate, or true is their expressive nuclei. In the case of classical music, for example, stake is connected to the expectation pressure to uphold the fidelity of the original model. Cognitive embodied stakes include the pressure from each moment demanding a level of precision, adaptation, and recall. Our physical body must carry out fine-tuned movements with consistency, reflecting the quality of our cognitive practices and rehearsal. This is an element of virtuosity. Interpersonal and social stakes encompass expectations as well, which are a contract between the performer and audience that some worthwhile, coherent, and intelligible material will be delivered. It speaks to the credibility of the performer as a professional, and there's vulnerability in this exposure that cannot be edited or retracted. Psychological and emotional stakes are what people think of as the most critical element impacting performers. Connects to the anticipation of error or judgment, which creates anxiety. There's an entire medical field established around pathologizing stage fright because of the effect fear and anxiety have on a performer's ability to manifest the expressive nucleus. Epistemic and experiential stakes also operate in the live performance space, because performance itself is a one-time only event. There's no undoing, only unfolding. Any accident or mistake will alter what is known, felt, and remembered by both performer and audience. This is critical to the side of co-created meaning. Stakes rise as the potential for anomaly increases, particularly when the performance moves further from the ideal model, when the environment becomes less controllable, when the audience becomes more sensitive, or when the performer's expressive nuclei are under growing pressure. Ultimately, what's at stake in live performance is not merely the avoidance of error, but the preservation of expressive integrity under conditions of real-time pressure, fallibility, audience scrutiny, and the irreversibility of action. Further extrapolating what's at stake in live performance, I'll provide another heuristic for conceptual stability. Essentially, stake is divided by expressive nuclei multiplied by anomaly, and that all equals intelligibility. In this heuristic, intelligibility is the degree to which the performance can be understood, felt, and valued. Stake is the sum of personal, artistic, social, and professional investment. Expressive nuclei are the concentrated sources of meaning, affect, and embodied communication in the performance. An anomaly is a multiplication factor, which includes the potential magnitude of mistakes, accidents, or other deviations. Now, section B, affect. Affect and arousal are the emotional valences experienced by the performer, along with the level of their psychological activation and awareness. Internally, a performer experiences emotional activation from a host of sources. These elements are constructed from joy, fear, anticipation, emotion sources. Relationally, the performer and the audience are exchanging energy in the form of applause, silence, gasps, laughter, anticipation, expectation, attention, etc. Environmentally, circumstances concerning setting, sound, spatial, and temporal elements influence both the performer and the audience as well. Some examples include day or nighttime performances, indoor, outdoor settings, brief or extended set lists. Taken as a whole, it becomes apparent that in live performance, there's a certain level of volatility to all these interacting elements. So I'll construct another heuristic to help bind all these components together. Emotional charge, plus relational charge, plus environmental context, all multiplied by volatility, are what are the source of affect, what equals affect. This heuristic helps frame arousal as a compounded and emergent force, generated by the emotional state of the performer, the relational dynamics between performer and audience, and the situational intensity of the performance environment. Before moving on, let's collect our heuristic equations together for ease of reference. Each of the following equation models a distinct but interconnected facet of live performance, allowing for the analysis of anomaly and mistake-making within contemporary performance practice, and they're listed there. These metaphorical equations suggest that affect and arousal feed into the expressive nucleus, shaping the performer's output and in turn influencing the final constructed model of the performance. They also propose that anomaly operates as a dynamic force within live performance, emerging in junctures between models and in the interplay between stake, affect, and expectation, where this interplay modulates both the legibility and impact of the performance. Later in this work, I'll explore placing some of these variables into a markup chain in order to develop a predictive simulation of incidences of anomaly over time. This will be helpful in constructing a methodology for applying creative resilience in contemporary performance practice techniques. Section 1.3, Personal, Public, and Relevancy. Beauty, awe, and curiosity sit around the hearth of anomaly, as do terror, shame, and nightmarish figures of uncertainty. Performers are haunted by their mistakes, by the accidents which end their careers, by the impact of the unknown on their lives in the split-second blink of their eye. We also are haunted by the anomalies that evoke virtuosity within us, which sometimes cause us to spill out such powerfully enriching and intelligible expressions that our audience praises our technical and emotive prowess. Both virtuous and catastrophic anomalies are impossible to replicate, and they leave marks so deep upon us they remain forever embossed on our soul. The impetus for this book rests here, by the warmth of the hearth, shimmering as illuminated embers blanketed by ashen debris. It was Sunday, May 15th, 2016, when I was devastated by live performance anomaly. On this date, history was made by a Master of Art in Performance Practice recital necessary for the completion of my degree. It was a culmination of 2 years of research, rehearsal, and rigorous training. I put together a 2-hour-long recital, which allowed me to move across a timeline of repertoire beginning in the Eastern Byzantine Empire and ending with originally composed avant-garde material written during my time at the University of California, Santa Cruz, where this recital took place. The stage was set, the stakes are high, friends and family had traveled from far away, faculty and staff are in attendance, and my reputation as a multi-instrumentalist and multidisciplinarian are on the line. Obviously, I was in a highly aroused state, filled by an abundance of potential energy. The opening 2 pieces came off perfectly. The third piece was a duet, to be performed by my lute advisor and I. The original model was repertoire composed by Vincenzo Galilei, the father of Galileo Galilei. Vincenzo had written this duet for plectrum lute and strum lute. I used the plectrum to play a melodic line, where my advisor used her right hand to pluck chords as accompaniment. We had meandered our way through most of the composition until nearly at the end. This is where anomaly manifested itself. My advisor made a mistake, a critical mistake. She skipped an entire system of notation, effectively putting her several moments ahead of where I was melodically at the time. You see, in live performance anomaly, when there are more than one performer, anomalies take multiple forms. One person's mistake becomes an accident the other person has to respond to. Anomaly is insidious in that way. It sometimes cascades into catastrophe. Because I was playing the melodic line, it was absolutely imperative that I maintained intense focus. The melodic line cannot break down or be altered or improvised without compromising the original model or the ideal model. Unfortunately, though, the anomaly was too volatile for me. I became tense, displeasured, and even more highly aroused, causing me to pluck the wrong strings and produce a cornucopia of unintelligible sounds as expressive nuclei. Somehow, a semblance of creative resilience came into our bodies, and we managed to flail and folly our way to the end of the piece, arriving at a severely distorted, constructed model. Explaining the emotions I felt in that moment, the desire to laugh, cry, scream in frustration, to run and hide, to disappear, it's almost impossible. After bowing and leaving the stage for a moment of respite, I stood in the vestibule behind the stage and shook, body trembling, sweat dripping from my brow, galvanized by this disastrous event that I had just lived through, which forever destroyed the quality of my recital and forever altered my mind and soul of being a performer. This was the harbinger of my research in live performance anomaly. This was the kernel that unleashed an insatiable curiosity to explore accidents, mistakes, and their consequences in the context of live performing arts.